And hello, I'm broadcasting on like three different mediums right now. Hopefully, my bandwidth isn't having a heart attack. Um, shoot, the Facebook thing tells me to turn my phone, so you're not going to get very good pictures. Sorry, guys. I don't know how else to. Maybe I can brace this up with something. But yes, it's the last 90 minutes before the end of our Kickstarter. And we're so close to our first stretch goal. And I really thought that I owed it to our authors to, like, there we go, that looks okay. All right, I thought I owed it to our authors to kind of, like, get on the horn and tell you why you really ought to support our anthology if you haven't already. We are, let's see, we are $139 Canadian from $2,000, which would enable me to send a complimentary paperback copy to all of our authors. And I would really like to do that because they're awesome and they really deserve it. Okay, so I'm here to tell you why you want to support the anthology. All right, so I'll repeat all the selling points in case you're just coming in. Gunsmoke and Dragonfire is an anthology of fantasy western stories, space westerns, weird westerns, cattle punk, which is steampunk in a western setting. Right? It's comes from there are 25 stories. They're all by authors of different disciplines. Many of them are science fiction and fantasy writers, but not all of them. Some of them are, come from a mystery or literary writer background. Some of them are from just a variety of writers. Some of them are more Western than they are fantasy generally, and they're really unique. They're all different. They all have a speculative element. That was a very important part of my decision, but they're all also westerns at heart. So we feature stories from a bunch of brand new writers as well as people whose names you know. I had better shut that down there. Sorry about that. That's my message thing letting me know that someone is responding to me, and this is going to go on for a little bit. So I thought what I would do is I would perhaps read some excerpts from some of the stories that would tempt you into getting involved. Maybe I should give you my author list here first. All right. So our anthology features Inheritance by Ethan Hedman, When the Bell Strikes 3 by Joachim I think it's Hindermans. Yeah, that would make sense. He's from the Netherlands, so sorry, cut me a break. The Case of the Vanishing Unicorns by James Blakey, A Different Kind of Law by Eric S. Fomley, Red Tide Rising by Sarah Coder, Pinkerton by Liam Hogan, The Teeth of Winter, which is my offering to the collection. It's part of my Weird West series, but it happens out of the sequence so that if you aren't familiar with the stories, you will be able to follow it and I hope enjoy it. And if you are familiar with the stories, you'll see the characters that I've already introduced and a few new ones besides on a new adventure. Okay, Fallen Horseshoes by G. Scott Huggins, Raiders of the Lost World by Ron S. Friedman, No Cell by Ricardo Victoria, Blaming Beamard by Stanley B. Webb, Rick and the Green Gunslinger by Zach Chapman, One Hell of a Game by Robert Lee Beers. That's something that he did. He took his urban fantasy noir characters from his very popular Tony Mandolin series and did a time travel adventure with them. So that's pretty cool. Orcus Express Derailed by Russell Hemmel. Glorious Madness by Jude Marie Green. That is an awesome story. I really love the tone of it. It reminds me of Cordwainer Smith. Some of you will know who I'm talking about. Others require an explanation, but he's a very influential writer in early science fiction that a lot of writers know about and a lot of readers don't. But a lot of the stuff that you really like that came from people like Gene Wolfe and Philip K. Dick and a whole bunch of others were strongly influenced by Cordwainer Smith. So, El Diablo de Paseo Grande by Milo James Fowler, which is part of his Coyote Cal books. By Way of Answer by Sean Jones. The Sound of One Shoe Tapping by R. Daniel Lester. Balthazar Beausoleil's Blink Wolf Basher by Paul Alex Gray. Gotta love the title. The story is just as outlandish and cool. The Burning Plains by Brent A. Harris. A Prayer for the Reaping Season by Mackenzie Kincaid. Rollo's Herd by Claire Ryan. Riders of the Rainbow Ridge by Diana L. Paxson. And Lonesome by Carrie Gessner. It also features a story by Robert E. Howard, Rattle of Bones, which first appeared in Weird Tales in June of 1929, which is in the public domain. So, let's see what I'm going to read for you. So I have like my contracts here, right? And when I signed up the writers, I asked them if they were willing to let me post audio of their story for podcasting purposes in order to promote the anthology. And if they have agreed to do so, then I am going to read from it. So give you a sense of what's going on. Yes. Okay. So Robert Lee Beers says that I can read some of his story. So I'm going to do that. Let's see here. All right. So this is from One Hell of a Game. I think I'll give you the beginning because it's quite the beginning. It's really, it got me into the story. I was there right away. And I wish I could do it, but I think that if I were reading Tony Mandolin for something professionally, I would probably read him like, all right, sweetheart. He'd have like this noir voice, right? So picture that and we'll go for it. All right. Chapter 1. What the hell? The shaking woke me up as it also tossed me right out of my bed. You have to understand the type of bed the Victorians had in those days, and this one came with the house. The top of the mattress is almost 4 feet off the floor. As it turns out, a very hard floor. The entire house was jumping around as if being shaken by a giant. You have to know what sort of life I lived to understand why I considered checking to see if that was the case. I could hear Frankie squealing from his room on the 3rd floor, and Greystoke was barking to beat the band. It almost sounded as if he were syncopating his yelps with the shakes. Come on, boy, we gotta get out of here. I grabbed him by the collar and steered him towards the door, yelling for Frankie to head for the yard. The last place you want to be in a decent-sized quake is in any of the floors of a 100-plus-year-old house. The shaking continued all the way to the stairs, and then it began to settle. By the time we reached the lawn, the quake was over. Being California born and bred, I knew better than to trust that was the end of it. One thing about Mama Earth and her tantrums, she could start up again at a moment's notice, be quiet for several years, or whack you when you were least expecting. Tony, Frankie hissed at me as I looked up at my beautiful old Vicky, trying to see if there was any visible damage. I had quake insurance, but even at that, the insurance company would kick and scream over doing the right thing. What? I continued checking. Did that gutter look loose? Aren't you feeling cold? I shook my head. No, I replied. Why do you ask? The big guy cleared his throat and said, because you ran out of the house without dressing and you're giving Mrs. Podolsky quite an eyeful. I looked down and saw Mr. Happy flapping in the breeze. Then, almost as if scripted by a comedy writer, I looked to my right and saw Mrs. Podolsky smiling at me. I think I set an all-time record for the bare-ass sprint. Frankie's wolf whistle didn't help at all. A small aftershock rattled the dishes a bit as I rushed into my clothes. There was a case waiting for me across the park, so I took the time to collect my various helpers, legal and not so much legal. Then I headed downstairs. Frankie saw my getup and asked, "Aren't you going to wait for me?" I thought about it. The issue with this client had included some guy with a temper, so it wouldn't hurt to have the big guy around. You have to know Frankie to understand. He's slightly bigger than NFL lineman size and a lot stronger. He's also a part-time raging drag queen, pop culture sponge, and the partner in my investigation business. He's not my partner, if you catch my subtle meaning there. Nodding, I said, "Yeah, go get dressed. I'll get Greystoke fixed up." By the time Frankie came down, I had Greystoke, my German shepherd, set up in the backyard with food, water, and a brief check in his doghouse to make sure he didn't have any squatters in the way of coons or skunks. Yes, it happens in San Francisco, too. Frankie finally asked the question when we were on the bus headed towards Geary. "So, what's this case about?" "Kind of an odd one," I said. "Old school. Real old school, if you think about it. Some guy's going around selling insurance against him coming back and breaking things if the shop owner refuses to pay." "Ooh," Frankie said. "I remember a Briscoe County episode about that. It was the one where they introduced Viva, the Elvis—" I cut off the side trip into TV land. "Yeah," I said. "Let's focus, big guy. What do you know about the Richmond district?" He pursed his lips and thought. Pretty ethnic neighborhood. A lot of Russian speakers. Well, Eastern European, really. Various dialects. Mostly Jewish folk whose families escaped the Iron Curtain." He looked at me and said, "Not much, really." As I said, if you didn't know the big guy, you'd have probably thought he was putting you on, or even being egotistical, but you would have been way off base. He didn't consider his local citizen knowledge to be all that much, figuring anyone would have to know the same thing about the neighborhood. What Frankie didn't, and probably never will, realize is that most of humanity, regardless of where they live, are about as shallow as an empty gutter, and anything that does not directly affect them isn't worth investigating. Anyway, I thought the characters were really great. This is a long story, so I'm not going to read any further because I have to go through the introduction to the case before I get to the part where there's an earthquake, and then all of a sudden they find themselves surrounded by a lot of people in really old-fashioned costumes, which of course are not costumes. Just a reminder, if you're watching this on Kickstarter Live, there is a pledge button on your screen, and we're hoping that you will be moved to do so. And if not, there's a link either on my page if you're watching this on Facebook, or you can search this in, you know what, I'll put it in the Google Hangouts chat window. I think. Is there? No, I have to watch that on Google Hangouts. Darn it. Okay. But you'll see various links on various other videos on the channel. So let me see if I can do that here. I'll type it in my chat window here. In the meantime, let's go to the next story here. Sorry, I'm doing all this by myself this morning. I was hoping to have someone to interview, but it just didn't work out. All right, find my channel. And I'll flip through and see what other stories I can read from. Cool, I can read from the case of the vanishing unicorns. I will do that. That's by James Blakey. Let's see here. I will find him. Go back. All right. Yep, there I am. And I'll just put the Kickstarter link in the chat window there. As soon as the page loads, of course. Hi, Jan. How are you? Good morning to you too. It is a beautiful day. I'd like to say happily, the Kickstarter is already funded at its basic goal. It's just that we're so close to our first stretch goal that I would really like to try to get that going for my writers. So, all right. So, from The Case of the Vanishing Unicorns by James Blakey. 50 unicorns stolen! Don Fenska's high-pitched whining filled the air. Heard you the first time, Don. I was washing goblin vomit off my coat, but the effort was wasted. The discharge had hardened, and now brown leather was spotted with a sickly yellow. I laid it in the sun to dry. Why don't we go inside? The Sparta Town Fathers didn't give me much of a budget, and the jail, which doubled as my office, was sparsely decorated. The rancher parked himself on the only choice of seat, an unpainted bench. It's my whole herd, and I know who did it. His dark eyes darted in rhythm with his flailing arms. That Jenny Carpenter, she's the one responsible. Jenny Carpenter, curly blonde hair and the scent of fresh strawberries. We danced too close at the town social and endured plenty of angry stares. She got the message. Been cool to me since. That's a pretty serious accusation. Do you have any proof? Don't need any. She's the only one who could. His voice grew smaller, arms dropped to his side. She's, never been, with the... His face turned bright red. She's a virgin? That explained plenty. Sheriff, please, Fenska grimaced. We're both gentlemen. No need to use that kind of language. But yes, because of her condition. It must be her. Virgins, I deliberately emphasized the word, are rare. But she's the only one? The only one we could find. Stephen Slater, Hector Ramirez, and I partnered to hire her for roundups. The arrangement worked fine, till 2 months ago when she demanded more money. We told her no, and now she's getting revenge on me. His voice had returned to that irritating tone. What's a teacher going to do with 50 unicorns? I don't think she can hide them behind the schoolhouse. She probably teamed up with Slater. He made a lowball offer on the herd last month, Don harumphed. Told him they weren't for sale, and to go perform an anatomical impossibility. A moment ago, you were partners with him. As a matter of convenience only, I wouldn't trust him, or Ramirez either. He narrowed his eyes. Maybe they're both involved. Anyone else you want to accuse? How about Father James? Start with the school teacher. Make her reveal her accomplices. Before I do that, how about I go and take a look at the scene of the crime? Waste of time. The unicorns are already gone, and I told you who did it. I rose to my feet and stared down at him. Don, I don't tell you how to be a rancher. Lord knows you could use the advice. And don't tell me how to be sheriff. Let me get Charlie and we'll head out to the Red Rock. But you'll talk to the teacher? Yes, later I'll talk to Miss Carpenter. I wanted to speak with Jenny again, but not about missing unicorns. So that's where he put his first break. So I think that's a good excerpt to read from that one. I was in right away. I was like, oh, this is interesting. We have 3 genres crossing here, fantasy, western, and mystery. I thought you sure can't beat that. All right. You may have noticed I'm going through these in alphabetical order because that's how I've got them filed. So, alrighty. I am not going to read you an excerpt from Sarah Coder's work, even though they agreed that I could. And the reason why is because they're going to get a podcast all of their own on Storycast Rob sometime in the next month. They wrote a really interesting science fiction western that has to do with 2 sheriffs on Mars. And it was really cool. But I'm going to I'm going to try to give everybody a little bit of time in the sun, and they're going to get theirs. So I don't feel it would be fair to use up this limited time that I have in order to do something, highlight a story that's already going to be highlighted. According to my clock, we have 67 minutes to go before the end of the Kickstarter. All right. Sorry about this. See, not everybody, there was an option as to whether or not I could share the story, and not everybody wants me to share the story. So that's fair. Other than in the book, of course, which will be available in e-format, paperback, trade paperback, and hardcover March 15th. I will also put pre-order links if you're not wanting to invest in the Kickstarter now, closer to the end of the broadcast. So, yes, Carrie Gessner also had her story read recently on Storycast Rob's podcast. He did an excellent job, and that is available in a link on the main Kickstarter page that I put right in the project description. If you want to check that out, it's excellent. I really recommend it. Here we go. Okay. Balthazar Beausoleil's Blink Wolf Basher by Paul Alex Gray. It was no place for a Frenchman. Certainly not for the rightful heir to the Bourbon throne. Ooh, I noticed a typo. Okay, good. I'm still in the process of finishing up final copies, so that's all right. Balthazar shivered and drew his cloak around him. The cockpit of the Basher was cramped, and the metal plating did little to stop the chill of the Nebraska Territory night seeping in. Every few minutes he had to wipe condensation from the porthole glass. Beside him, Sheriff McKinley slept, snoring loudly. Balthazar sighed, gazing outside. The prairie grass swayed in the wind, painted silver gray under the cloudless sky. He hated this place. I should be sitting on my throne, not in this hunk of metal. And yet, here he was, scouring the plains for a glowing splice rift, seeking a pack of blink wolves led by an outlaw. The sneering words of the Union commander still echoed. Rescue the governor's daughter, and I'll have you rewarded. Fail me, and I might have a word with the ambassador of the French Republic. Balthazar's anger boiled, despite the cold. Instinctively, his hands reached around the cockpit. He barely knew he was doing so, but he was checking the pressure valves, giving the steam drives the gentlest of nudges to keep them primed, and twiddling with the boiler key to make sure the coals didn't burn out. He'd been operating Bashers for half of his 16 years, preferring the cold comforts of the machines to the company of people. He shuffled in his seat, adjusting his leather jerkin. In its center, a heavy copper fleur-de-lis had been sewn in, stolen from the Palais of Versailles during the last days of the Revolution. It was said to be imbued with magic, although he was sure that was just a tale told after too much Cabernet Sauvignon. My pronunciation. Along with a short-bladed dagger, it was one of the few mementos he had to remind him of his royal heritage. A monumental fart stole through the cabin, and Balthazar cursed aloud, turning to stare at his companion. Mon Dieu, Sheriff McCarthy, you stinking pig! On the cockpit floor, the old sheriff mumbled, but slept on. Balthazar's eyes widened, and he reached madly for the nearest porthole, opening it quickly. Icy air spilled in and stung his hands, but it was better than the rancid stench of the oaf assigned by the Union commander. Kneeling by the porthole, Balthazar stuck his head out and looked down. His Basher stood 20 feet tall, and that was in the squat position. When running, or standing high to impose fear, it topped 30 feet. The two long wooden metal legs inverted at the knee, encasing a vast network of tubes and pipes that passed compressed air and steam throughout. A gassy blood that lifted the basher with the power to run as fast as a locomotive. It was armed with a fast-loading cannon up top, which could be operated from the cockpit or manually by a second person. He'd come to the territory earlier this month after running low on money in New Orleans. Too many late nights spent at smoky poker tables. Balthazar knew the dealers were tricksters, but he loved the smell of those places and the attention of the women. Still, when his account ran dry, the manager did not hesitate to kick him out. He'd marched his machine northwards, thinking of heading up to Montreal until a traveler had given word that the governor's daughter had been kidnapped by the outlaw Morgan Wraithchild, who had somehow commandeered a pack of blink wolves. A decent bounty had been placed on her safe return. The sort of money that could secure the support of loyalists. Not enough to fund a counter-revolution, but perhaps the beginning of one. The woman was a splice engineer, some mad mix of science and the arcane. It was no surprise someone dallying in such arts had found herself in trouble. I think I'm going to leave it there, because now we've set the stage, and hopefully you're wondering what happens next. By the way, if at any time during the broadcast here you have questions, if you're watching on Kickstarter Live, you can type them into the chat window, as you can if you are watching it on YouTube. And if you're on my Facebook page, then I'll see it right in the beginning here. I'm just going to scroll a bit and make sure. Nope, that's all the comments I got right now. So, alrighty. Let's see what else I can read for you. Ah, cool. I can read from Glorious Madness by Jude Marie Green. I'm going to quickly go ahead to decide where I'm going to stop. Okay. I swear on what honor I have managed to scrape together over the past few years that she is unhinged. Her name is Donna Quick, and she is quite mad. Myself, I'm not mad. I am perhaps far too sane to spend my life following the lead of this peculiar swordswoman, but this is what I do. I am Jane Smith, magician, traveler, occasional troublemaker. Occasionally, trouble finds me, and this was how I found Donna Quick in the midst of my troubles. The whole tale of the ugliness surrounding my introduction to her service is best suited for another time. Suffice to say, she threw herself into the fray, mindless of the danger to her own person, when I was attacked by an army of ferric cats set upon me by the evil enchantress Altizadora. Her sword danced, and iron cat heads flew shedding rusty fur in a splattered monochrome arc, accompanied by the music of flung bells and cat screechings. Donna Quick saved my life that night. This was many years ago. Any debt between us has been settled long past my memory. Now I follow her, because in all truth, I love her. In her service, I grew used to sleeping out of doors, around a campfire, with only nature as a constant. Still, I found it difficult to sleep, even after all these years, and more difficult than that to awaken each morning. As usual, on this morning, Donna rose while the birds still slept. Her warmth in our blankets faded, and I stirred, chilled. I learned long ago not to ask her back into my embrace. She believes me a sluggard, and has more times than I can count come after me with the flat of her sword to beat me out of my comfort. I pretended to sleep a little longer, but she knew I was awake. I could see the attentive angle of her head as she moved about more noisily. Despite my slowness, I was not slothful. Donna and I had different biorhythms. Our bodies reflected our differing humors as well. I was large enough that my leather breeches wore out in embarrassing places on a regular basis, and my corset functioned overtime to strap down my mammary bits. Donna, on the other hand, never found pre-constructed leathers small enough for her slight, lanky frame, and must needs have her riding gear hand-fashioned by whatever craftswomen we met along the way. On her own, Donna would perhaps be naked. She would certainly starve to death. I stuck my arm out from under my blanket and pointed in the general direction of the fire pit. Accendo, I muttered. The fire agreeably flared into existence. When the clearing held enough warmth to melt the rimes of frost from the stones surrounding the fire pit, I threw off my blankets and stretched. From our saddlebags, I gathered the necessaries for our meal: water and coffee, bread and sausage. Come along, your breakfast, I said, holding out a tin plate of hot food for her. She seized the plate and retreated to the far side of the fire pit. Afterwards, I washed up and packed the camp. I could have accomplished the tasks with a few magical gestures, but I did not want to start the day worn out. Travel was exhausting enough. Before long, Donna had finished her morning exercises with her rapier, those swooshings with her sword that kept her the best swordswoman I'd ever known. To me, her movements looked like she engaged in tango with a slim metal partner, or perhaps flamenco, some wild Spanish dance that left her and her blade sweaty and satisfied. She wiped the blade until it gleamed and then slipped it into her intricate dyed leather scabbard. Our mounts awaited us. I rode an Asian-designed rice burner, soberly black, carefully polished so rust had no chance of eating her alive. The grain and the fuel in the cells murmured as I seated myself, knocking the kickstand up. I twisted the throttle and she started right up, the pleasant thrum of her single-cylinder engine a nice salute to the morning. Donna's mount, Rosinante, was of an entirely different breed. What breed that might be, I did not know. Her fuel nacelles were curved and unpainted, gray as morning fog. Her handlebars were long and drooped alarmingly towards the leather and cloth patchwork seat. Her fairings were Baroque designs of twisted metal with holes poked through for some attempt at decoration that looked like a teenager's acne scars. In short, Donna's mount was the ugliest thing I had ever laid eyes on. Yet Donna loved it, and it responded with deep-voiced power that ran so efficiently I swore she fed it air. If I had not known better, I would have thought Rosinante an enchanted mount. I think that's a good place to stop there. I love this story, by the way. I love Jude Marie's language, her use of subtle irony, right? I really just, I think it's an amazing piece of work. And I'm really honored that she trusted me to get it out into the world. All right, well, I'm flipping through things here. 54 minutes to the end of our Kickstarter. We are $134 Canadian away from our first stretch goal of $2,000. 134 bucks. Check out the many rewards. There are quite a lot of really cool rewards. I'm sure we've got something for everyone. If we haven't convinced you to contribute yet, I really hope that you'll have a look. We've got everything from ebooks in a variety of packages, and they're running out, by the way. The ebook packages are running out. There's like one left. So check it out, right? There's art and collectible bits. We've got limited edition bookmarks, postcards that represent some of the stories in the collection. They're designed variously by people who do cover art for their stories, have contributed their covers as art. There are two poster style designs for Joachim's story. There are going to be, it's either I think it's 3 original art pieces by our cover artist, Aaron Siddall. And the cover art there illustrates the story Inheritance, which is the first story we've put in the book. And the other 2 will be for Raiders of the Lost World and Riders of the Rainbow Ridge. Whoa! People sending me messages apparently knocks that right off the thing. Oh, and I've turned around the camera somehow. Okay, there we go. We're back. Again, if you have questions or comments, I'm watching all of my questions and comments sections. By all means, type them in. There's a chat window on Kickstarter Live. There's, I see the comments on the video of the Facebook, right? I've got the video open on YouTube, so I can see any comments in the chat section there as well. All right, so sorry for the wait here while I flip through things. Aha, all right. Brent A. Harris will allow us to read from The Burning Plains. So Brent A. Harris has been nominated for the Sidewise Award for Excellence in Alternate History twice. Once for a story that he co-wrote with one of the other authors in the anthology, Ricardo Victoria. The story was called The Twilight of the Mesozoic Moon. And he also was nominated this year for his alternate history of the American Revolution called A Time of Need. And he had this really cool picture that he posted where he's on a panel with like Harry Turtledove and Gregory Benford. I mean, these are the people he was up against. This is no small award. This happens at Worldcon, which is the place where they distribute the Hugos, right? So it's it's pretty serious recognition. All right, The Burning Plains by Brent A. Harris. Bartlesville, Oklahoma Territory, August 1873. He was led by a lie. Free land. Settle out west of the Mississippi. Still, he took it, even though the prospect couldn't possibly be true. It wasn't. Drought, disease, and as if this place wasn't miserable enough. 5 years was too long to have survived out here. He'd forsaken his faith the first time he'd broken a shovel in the clay-packed earth, for God had forsaken him, cast him from a former island paradise where his folks had fled from famine, to the godless dust of the Kansas-Oklahoma border. Just as Adam was created, so Josiah Johnson would return. I'm sorry, I'm pretty tired this morning. Yeah. So Josiah Johnson would return. Dust to dust. Ashes to ashes. So much ash. In the morning, once his headache had subsided, he'd head back to his homestead, south of Wichita, for his usual inspection. He needn't bother. Nothing grew in the damn dirt. Hard and cracked. Others had tried wheat, but of those lucky enough to grow a crop, none lasted through the harvest. It wouldn't be until later in the day that his luck might turn. He'd meet in town with a group of homesteaders like himself to hire themselves a gun to extinguish the flame. The Burning Plains was a place where the world went upside down. A group of his kin must humble themselves and beg favor, placing their fate in the hands of a black marshal named Bass Reeves. But he was far from home, sunburned, sharing his bed with an Osage woman, soon to negotiate for his livelihood with a freeman turned lawman. Out here, he decided. You either cast this sorry, excuse me. Out here, he decided, you either cast aside differences to survive, or you burned. It was a sudden change in the wind that he noticed first, not at all dissimilar to how pressure drops before an oncoming storm, before blackened clouds sent hail and twisters, devilish creations screaming like banshees across the flatlands, rushing and thundering like a locomotive out to destroy. But this was no tornado. Wind rushed from beating wings. Sudden heat and the crackle of nearby fire followed, and then a roar, deep and inexorable. Waves crashing on a shore, beating against the breakers, a warning that the beast drew nearer, harbingers reminiscent of a battle drum. Josiah Johnson lost his lungs to laughter. There was no God, he knew, but there was something else. The devil rides the night. The planes caught fire. Through smoke and ash, Josiah caught a glimpse of the steer he'd brought south to safety, one of his last. Clutched within the great maw of the beast's crocodilian teeth, it whisked its prey away, vanished but for the carnage left in its wake, and finally Josiah found his breath. He knew the truth, lived with it for years. He'd seen it. Knew why the land was free, why so many who'd come had never returned to tell the tale. For when the dragon came, if you were caught in its flame, no matter the color of your skin, language, or the amount of coin you spent a lifetime collecting, all that remained would be a few bits of bone, ash, and your teeth. I was in. All right, 45 minutes to go on our Kickstarter, guys. We can do it. I know we can. Other rewards that are available include trade paperbacks. We've got trade paperbacks of the book, trade paperbacks that have been included in a package by other authors. And check it out. The big deluxe package, the big one is still available. There's a couple still available among the lesser package there, right? The deluxe package includes more books. Most of them will be signed by the authors or the editor. All the ones, there are signed packages specifically for the book and trade paperback, hardcover, whatever, from us. I can read from Ethan Hedman's story. I don't know if I should read this story because it's a short one and I don't want to give it all away. Well, you know what? Maybe I will. Maybe I will read the whole thing for you. This is just the first story in the collection. It's called Inheritance, and it's by Ethan Hedman. A string of bells chimed softly as Charlie Galloway strode into the tiny store. The sign swinging outside indicated that this was B. Whitaker and Sons Enchantorium, a proud name for this ramshackle building tucked snugly against the backside of a saloon. He heard a clatter from the room behind the counter as a short man with a long golden beard emerged. Welcome, welcome, the man said, sporting a warm smile. How might I assist you today? I'm looking for Barnabas Whitaker. Ah, I'm afraid you found the next best thing. I'm Archibald Whitaker, his second of 4 sons. Our father passed away a few years ago, you see. I had the honor of inheriting the family business and continuing in his footsteps. His reputation precedes us, and I can wholeheartedly say we still offer the finest enchantments money can buy. Well, Archibald Whitaker, I'm Charlie Galloway. Ever heard that name? The shopkeeper stroked his beard thoughtfully. I can't say it rings a bell. Charlie snatched a revolver out from underneath his coat and slammed it down on the counter. How about now? Goodness gracious, Archibald recoiled. Is this a robbery? Charlie snickered. Of course not. This here's my daddy's gun, he said, gesturing at the pistol. Go ahead and take a gander. Archibald sighed in relief. He pulled a pair of small spectacles from his breast pocket and leaned in for a closer look. The revolver was long and made of dark metal. It seemed as though the weapon had seen better days. Its wooden grip was badly scuffed, and the barrel had the beginnings of rust spots. Ah, yes, well, I must admit, I'm rather lacking in expertise when it comes to firearms. Take a good look at the side of it, fella. Archibald gingerly lifted the gun, squinting at the engravings. They were worn, but still clearly decorative, showing a dragon flying through wisps of clouds. Beneath the scene lay a tiny string of words. He finally made them out. B. Whitaker, Enchanter. Or Ench, period, but Enchanter. I don't understand, he whispered, mostly to himself. My father never dealt in arms. Charlie snorted, leaning on the counter. Guess that there's what they call an exception. Your daddy left you this shop? My daddy, Charles Galloway Sr., left me this gun. Said he got it from a wizard who magicked it up for him special. This here's one of a kind. Well, the evidence is certainly in your favor. I can't imagine anyone fabricating my father's name for this sort of thing. Archibald trailed off, lost in thought, before setting the revolver back down. Well, regardless, I'm sure you didn't come here just to flavor my family's legacy with a hearty dash of mystery. Yeah, it's broke. I see, but I'm hardly a weaponsmith. Shoots bullets well enough, but ain't magics anymore. Oh, well then, depending on the enchantment. My daddy left me this here too, Charlie said, sliding a folded piece of paper across the counter. Archibald unfolded the document. An eternal guarantee? Signed by your daddy himself, Barnabas Whitaker. I see. Give me a moment to examine this, if you'd be so kind. He scanned the words carefully, mumbling fragments of the sentences. Hereby granted in perpetuity to Charles Galloway and members of his lineage, for repairs and refinement to be serviced immediately. Well, Archibald abandoned the paper and wiped the sweat from his brow. I must admit this document appears quite genuine. Sure does. Nevertheless, we use certain security measures in the Whitaker family to verify the nature of such claims. Our guarantees are always fireproof, you see. May I attempt to burn a corner? The gun's broke, fella. Yes, I heard. So who's to say this paper ain't broke, too? Well, you might just burn up that pretty old signature while you're at it. Archibald furrowed his brow. Are you suggesting I would try to weasel out from honoring my own late father's guarantee? Charlie looked him hard in the eye while scratching the back of his neck. Yep. My dear fellow, if you would... Figured we'd keep this between us, mister, but I can always come back with some fancy-pants lawyer. Oh, there's no need for... Heard there's a court and judge right here in town. I reckon a few of them law-bending dandies will be prowling around. Really, this is entirely uncalled for. I only wish to clip a small corner from the document which I can then attempt to burn. And if the paper's broke? My good man, our fireproofing enchantments have always been the finest in the land. Put simply, they do not end. Not once has any customer of ours complained of a single fireproof item being so much as singed. Not once, and I have no doubt a judge would see the truth of it. I only wish to avoid the hassle and costs associated with the with the servicemen of the law. Archibald took a deep breath. Now then, he said, retrieving a pair of silver scissors from beneath the countertop. With your permission, may I proceed? Nope. Charlie grabbed the paper from the counter and tore a piece away. No tricks, wizard. He brought a match out from a tiny box and struck it against the counter. My fire, not yours. Archibald sighed. Fine, fine. Charlie held the match beneath the torn scrap for 10 seconds, counting them under his breath as they passed. Not so much as a wisp of smoke ever appeared. Well now, he said, dropping and stomping on the match, you weren't lying about the paper. Yes, I'll honor my father's guarantee, of course. May I see that again? Archibald gingerly took the document back in hand. This item was enchanted twice. The original enchantment is protected behind something of a barrier. It can only be used successfully, with its magical properties intact, by one person at a time. The moment your father passed away, it returned to a state of, how about fixing it? Actually, I'm quite sure the enchantments are working perfectly. Not for me, they ain't. I need the damn thing more'n you know. I merely have to bind it to you. Fret not, it's a simple process. Archibald scanned the paper for a moment before finally putting it down. He gently tucked his spectacles back into his pocket. I hope you'll pardon me for asking, but... Charlie snorted. What now? Well, as I said, I'll honor the guarantee, but my father failed to indicate the nature of the gun's original enchantment. So? He spoke often of how he loathed violence in the world. He was the type of man who gave goods and services for free to those who truly needed them. In short, he was a charitable, peaceful soul. I simply don't understand why he would have chosen to enchant a weapon. Charlie smirked. Well, that all sounds right enough to me. This here gun wasn't no purchase. The guarantee was free of charge, too. These are gifts. We damn sure needed them. Archibald escorted his customer outside. What a remarkable story, he said, clapping Charlie on the back. I must say, today has been an unexpected pleasure. Turned out all right for the both of us, I reckon. Charlie wrapped a long blue scarf around his face, tying it tightly in the back. You got a story? I got my gun working right. He strode to his steed and stroked its mane before lifting himself onto the saddle. Truly a beautiful animal, if I may say so, Archibald said, admiring the sleek chestnut stallion from a distance. Oh, if you could spare half of an hour, I'd be more than happy to enchant that saddle before you leave. I can assure you beyond any doubt it will always be warm and comfortable. Nah. Charlie strapped his legs to the saddle with a series of small belts. Always suited my daddy just fine. Suits me just as good. Thanks all the same. He grabbed the reins and turned his mount away from the enchantorium. You're always welcome here, you know, Archibald called. Charlie nodded, turning his back. We got work to do, he whispered. Come on now. The horse sped into a gallop before unfurling its wings, flapping a few times for stability before climbing high into the air. He closed his eyes and thought about his father. He remembered how he used to shoot bottles for Charlie's entertainment when he was just a boy. Charlie once asked his father if he ever missed. Can't afford the luxury, kid, Charles Sr. had said, twirling his lucky revolver. What I do is too goddamn important to miss. He touched the handle of the gun strapped firmly at his side. Dragons beware, he thought. The people below could rest easy as long as a Galloway patrolled the skies. I love it. I hope you do too. All right, once again, just a reminder here. We have 33 minutes to go. We are $134 Canadian away from our first stretch goal. I would really like to encourage you guys, if you haven't already, to support this Kickstarter. These writers are awesome, as I hope you're seeing in the process of reading from their stories, and I really think that they deserve your support. I was really kind of stunned at the quality of story that I attracted for this. I was expecting a little project, mostly taken up by indie writers that I personally knew. I was not at all expecting the response that I got. I posted the link on the Grinder, however, and therefore it was exposed to a wider audience. I figured that, however, since I was only paying royalties, at least on the outset, I wasn't likely to, attract anybody I'd actually heard of, but I attracted quite a lot of people that are established voices in the genre. And the fact that they're willing to trust me with this means that I feel that I owe them my best. And that's why I'm on here this morning asking you to support this Kickstarter. Thank you very much, whoever just made your pledge. My I'm thrilled. We're at $2,216. We have made our first stretch goal. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased. Those of you who have contributed, I can't even see who did that right now because the window isn't open. But I'm so pleased and excited, and believe me, it's going to be so worth it, and you're going to love it. Thank you so much. That's fantastic. Yeah, one donor got the deluxe library. I'm so glad somebody picked that up. And I can't even, it's like, might as well be anonymous because the name is Chris. Thank you very much, Chris. That is great. I'm going to need your information when you fill out the backer survey, which will come sometime in the next couple of days, because of course we're going to need your mailing address so we can send you all those great books. I'm so glad somebody picked that up because I thought that was just an awesome deal. And, thank you. We're not going to let you down. You're going to love it. Well, yeehaw. I'm so excited. Thank you very much. That's just great. We still have half an hour to go. I don't think we're going to reach our second stretch goal because I believe that's I think it was $3,000. At that point, I can pay all the writers 1 cent a word, and the cover artist $100. That's probably out of reach at this point with half an hour to go, but I promised you I'd be here, so I'm going to continue reading from the stories. And just before the end of the broadcast, I'll give you some information about where you can find us after this, what's coming up. Yeah. I'm so excited. That's so cool. All right. So I'm going to read the beginning of a story called When the Bell Strikes 3 by Joachim Hindermans. They stood there up on the hill, which granted them a good vantage point of the entire valley. From there, the kid could see the town clearly, nestled safely among the evergreens that decorated the foot of the mountains. He had never heard of a town being out here, hadn't figured on anyone to be crazy enough to settle so far off the beaten path. Next city was miles out west. Weren't no ranches around either, just empty prairies that led to cold mountains. They'd been riding for days now, and it was by simple luck that they stumbled on it. Weren't exactly the type of place they were accustomed to, but this place was good enough to rest. The horses needed feed and water, and they needed a place to lay low. And with something this remote, the less likely the chance they would run into a marshal. Hell, he'd be amazed if their local sheriff was up to snuff. What you reckon? Buck asked, peering down at the town. He pulled out his gun to replace the bullets he had fired when they ran out of the last place they'd stopped for the night. Some Peckerwood deputy recognized the two of them and tried to be a hero. Buck pulled 3 bullets from his belt, replacing the 2 that were now lodged in the deputy and the one he shot into the air during their escape, scaring off the regular folks. "What do I reckon about what?" the kid asked. "We gonna get any trouble from them folks down there?" "Please," the kid scoffed. "Look at it. Their idea of a good time is probably the church picnic. Them folks is likely to have a fit the moment they get their eyes on our guns." "Good enough for me," Buck chuckled. With a kick of his boot, he ran his horse down the hill. The kid followed suit. The terrain was rocky, even for being so close to the mountains. There were plenty of grasslands all around, but it didn't seem like there were any steers or crops being raised anywhere. You'd think the townsfolk would do something with it. Both of them rode into town as if they owned the place, passing by a lone plow that was rusted in the dirt. Not a nervous bone in either of them. Why would there be? Anyone asked, they were just 2 fellers who came down to visit the good folk of this lovely town. A town, the kid noticed, that didn't seem to have a name of any sort, with no post to tell them where they were. Just a handful of houses, a handful of woefully supplied businesses, a stable that lacked in any horses, and a church that was in desperate need of repairs. It was an empty place, with not a single soul to welcome them either, if one discounted the lone drunk that huddled under a tree beside the destroyed church they just passed. The dumb bastard seemed to be chatting up a storm with himself, mumbling incoherently in tongues. Neither the kid nor Buck gave the feller much thought at first. Just another wino. Hundreds out from where they'd just come. It was when the man spotted the 2 riders and scurried towards them, practically on his hands and feet, that he caught their attention. His black clothes, which had faded and turned near brown from the dirt that clung to it, hung loosely from his body, as if they once belonged to a much fatter man. His beard was rough and unkempt, and he seemed to be missing all but one of his teeth. "Masons!" he belted out with a dry heave. "Masons come to the trees when the hooves bury the dirt! I see the dark now, and its jaws eat the acorns of the blue!" The kid chuckled. "What's this dumb son of a bitch blathering on about?" he asked. The man spun in a circle. "Smoke! Smoke in the hill! And teeth! Smoking teeth! They come for all our souls!" Buck leaned down towards the man. "Hey, what town is this? This place got a name?" The man stopped spinning. He looked at Buck with the widest eyes the bandit ever did see on a man. For a moment, a hint of color seemed to return to the wino's eyes. With trembling hand, he pointed toward the remains of a burnt pile of wood. The ground around it was singed black. Just looking at it sent a chill down Buck's spine. A sense of dread lingered around this whole place, like a bad taste that fouled up the air. "Look, you drunk bastard, my friend asked you," the kid snapped. But it was for naught, as the man in black ran off and screamed something fierce and unintelligible. "What's he saying?" the kid asked his partner. "Don't know. Something about carcasses." I hope you're intrigued. I certainly was with that particular story. 24 minutes to go. We have reached our first stretch goal. Thank you again for that. There are still some really cool stuff available. There's hand-bound books, and it's not just hand-bound like just a blank notebook either. It will be a copy of Gunsmoke and Dragonfire, which will be hand-bound. So I think that's a really exciting thing too. Oh, okay. I can read from Orcus Express Derailed by Russell Hemmel. I probably won't read that much of this because I don't want to give anything away. I'll just read the beginning. They looked at each other, and then again at the celestial body, magnified many times over the ship's main screen. Observing those blurred yet visible features, Leanne had a feeling of weariness that the rarefied beauty of the landscape before their eyes couldn't dispel. Fascinating, isn't it? Marin said. It is. That Orcus was by no means a dwarf planet like the others, Leanne already knew. It had plenty of micromoons around its orbit, and even a faint set of rings, which made it look like a sort of miniature Saturn. From a close-up observation, it was possible to detect an atmosphere thick enough to have clouds, meaning that it had to be denser than the spectrographic analysis suggested. She took out her magnifying goggles and glanced at her medical officer. It takes 248 years for this planet to complete an orbit around the sun. Sorry. It takes 248 years for this planet to complete an orbit around the sun, Marin, and it never comes closer than 30 AU. Would you imagine? We've colonies in places farther away. If you're talking about the Iridians, don't. Since the day they left for Sedna, they also renounced the Outer Space Forum's membership. These ones instead, they did stay in touch until one day they simply disappeared from your channels. Leanne Avery frowned, thinking about the weirdness of the whole story. At a given moment of the glorious space age, all communications from the remotest human outpost had stopped. Catastrophic events like an asteroid impact or other cosmic disruptions had been ruled out. The planet looked just fine. After several weeks of total radio silence, even allowing for the distance-related delay, the Joint Earth Command had begun fretting over it. It has been 15 months since we left on this Orcus-bound mission, and still no news, Leanne said. Who knows what we're going to find down here? If we do find anything at all. Come on, an entire colony can't vanish up into thin air. Air is not that thin here, Leanne. Breathable or not, it's another story. We'll find out soon enough, Doc. She strapped herself back to her seat, initiating the procedure for the descent. Ooh, space mystery. You're like, how is this a Western? You wait. 20 minutes to go. All right, so coming up over the next little while, at some point we will have an interview with Diana Paxson. She is happy to do an interview. She just wasn't available in the short time. She's busy and it takes her a couple days to get back to her email, and that's fair enough. But we will have it, and we will air it on Kickstarter Live so that, we have the complete list of interviews. So keep watching the Kickstarter page. We will also air it as a premiere on my YouTube channel. So keep a watch for that as well. Oh, cool. Okay. Yes, I can read from Pinkerton by Liam Hogan. Liam Hogan's story, by the way, whose title I should remember, but I remember that it is in Terra Tara Terror, the same issue that my story, The Android Graveyard, is in, right? It has been universally praised, his story, not mine, has been universally praised on pretty much every review site I have seen it on, and it is up for a pushcart award. So I really hope that you'll give that a chance and check it out too. He's a really good writer. Hopefully you will see that. The story is called Pinkerton. There we go. Movement. Crow murmured, and Red snapped the brim of his hat away from his eyes. There were 4 of us up on the bluff, killing time in what little shade there was. I'd been sat half-sheltered by a rock, turning my near-empty canteen over in my hands, wishing I hadn't been so free with the water earlier in the day's ride. William Townsend, or Red Bill, or just plain Red, depending on your preference, was in charge of this rump of the gang, at least until Riley and Masterson and the rest returned. He had his back against the only tree worthy of the name, his tattered hat tilted forward and covering his face. He hadn't been asleep, though. I'd been watching him dance a silver $half back and forth across his knuckles. "Don't see nothing," Red said after a moment's gaze. "Out by the gulch." Since Crow hadn't moved or reached for the throwing knife tucked in his boot, Red slowly eased himself over to where the Indian squatted, peering out into the heat haze. Crow says he's part Apache, part Zuni, all devil. Masterson says that makes him a mongrel, but he doesn't say it to his face. Masterson's folks got run off their land a while back, though he neither knows nor seems to care which particular tribe of Indians did that. When he brings it up, Crow just laughs and says, "What made it their land?" Red squinted and rubbed the stubble on his scarred face. "Runt," he called back to me. "Wake up Doc and bring me my glasses." I leapt up, eager to help, until Red turned and froze me with a glare. "Do it quietly," he hissed, "and stay behind the damn tree line." Doc Faraday was asleep, judging by the snores. Despite the surgeon's goggles he sometimes wore and the manner he affected, he was no doctor, and his real name wasn't Faraday. The combination suited the air of learning and respectability he said his scams required. Woe betide you if, lying wounded on some lonely dirt track, he reached into his black bag and offered assistance, because that's where he kept his Army-issue Colt revolver. And no, he wasn't in the Army either. It seemed everyone had a nickname. I hadn't wanted too much probing of the hasty moniker I'd given that day 3 months back when I'd fallen in with them, and so, seeing as to how at 14 years of age I was the youngest as well as the newest member of the Riley gang, I'd suggested they call me the Kid. "More like the Runt," Riley had laughed, wheeling his horse around as he looked down on my shivering frame. "And don't you just know that's the name that stuck?" I'd been in a wagon they'd liberated on the outskirts of Fort Smith, recovering from a beating that had relieved me of everything I owned. A silver lining in some ways. The gang would never have taken me in if I hadn't looked the sorrowful stray, if I'd had anything on me that might still tell them who I was. I'd kept my head down until the gunfire had ceased, until the wagon had stopped bouncing over every rut in the road and then some, until it was pulled to a halt and they'd eagerly snap back the canvas cover to survey their haul. No doubt they were hoping they'd plundered supplies, or tradable equipment, or maybe even some whiskey. They weren't best pleased when what they found was me, bloodied and bruised and buried in a mound of rags headed for the paper mill. Masterson was all for shooting me then and there, since I'd seen his face and would be able to identify him. But as Riley dryly observed, I wasn't the first and won't be the last, so it didn't signify. "We'll just beat him and send him loose. Be a couple hours before he staggers back into town or runs into any posse heading our way, by which time we'll be long gone." It was my fear of the law, rather than another beating, that had me pleading to stay with the outlaws. Once the authorities knew I'd been in the presence of the infamous Riley gang, for however short a time, they'd be asking questions. All sorts of questions. Like who I was, and where I was from, and what I was doing hidden in that wagon. And no amount of evasion would satisfy them. They'd keep asking, keep digging, until the dreadful truth was unearthed, and that, well, that would be that. My life would be over. Over before it had even begun. "Can you ride?" Red had asked, and I nodded yes. "Can you shoot?" Doc asked, and, after only a moment's thought, I nodded yes once again. "Never mind all that," Riley grinned. "Do you know how to cook and clean, and brush down a horse, and build a fire? And are you smart enough to keep quiet when you needs to?" I looked up at him, dumbstruck, which thankfully he'd taken as a yes to all of the above, particularly the last. He'd shrugged. So, what do we call you, boy? And I think that's off to a good start there, too. So I think I'm going to leave it at that so I don't tell you too much about that story. Cool. Thank you very much. We've had another contribution. You're up to $2,296. We have 12 minutes to go. I suppose I have the chance to read you one last blurb from somebody. Cool. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to read from the last story is called By Way of Answer by Sean Jones. When the Numino warriors charged on horseback through the early morning mist, when the enemy tribes splashed and churned across the willowed creek, shrieking their inhuman cries, swinging their war clubs, smashing our wickiups, the bison hide-covered domes shattering like the skulls of our women and our boys and our old men under the swinging cudgels, when the Numinu Comanches, meaning enemy, and a better word for them than Numinu, charged out of the eastern sun as I limped home from battle. I saw them bludgeon and trample my village and carry off all our property, saw them slaughter all our livestock, destroy my home, and murder my kin, and take my horse and our relic runestone. For those reasons, I walk west afoot to retrieve the things thieved by the Comanches, while, in the western hills of the northern Navajo, the air chills and makes somber the pungent odor of the cedar trees as the gray clouds darken against a grayer sky, and I know it will soon snow. Without my horse, I am a wanderer. Without my woman and our unborn child, I will be the last of my tribe, and without luck, I will not survive the oncoming snowstorm. Nudging against the sealskin bag hanging from my neck, a pendant dangles, the tiny twin of the carved runestone, carried to these lands by my tribe's distant ancestors from distant Norway to the coast of this place, and then down one great river and up another, though Vulcan blood barely drips through our veins anymore, and our language has less Norse in it every new moon. The vow I made to myself, with no other person alive in our village to swear to, the promise I made that I would not let our people's sacred stone be lost, and that I would avenge my Ojibwe wife, my Karen, if I had to follow the enemy's tracks through all these plains and sands and scrub forests of Comancheria, and now past the borders of their lands as if they would raid every other tribe between the two oceans. The pledge tumbles in my ears like the roar heard in a seashell taken from a foamy beach on one of those salted seas. The Comanches' trail will soon lead through falling snow, but if I can brave the storm, their footprints will lead me to them. I know, for the raven knows. And where is my raven-haired wife's raven? I kneel in the dust, the bloody color of a setting sun, and squint skyward, but the heavens shade the bird's wings and beak and body, and I do not see his path. And I do not hear his ka-wa-ra cry, and he no longer leads me towards my mission. He does not tell me whether he has kept or lost the track of the Comanches, but his silence says, seek shelter, Yildane, for no birds risk their feathers when wind and snow battle one another amongst the clouds. The cedars here are meager, skinny, lacking the height and girth and large leaves of my tribe's bommelbjorks, cottonwood being the funny fur trapper name for our good trees. Yet, as the sun moves as far to the west as there is, before she crawls east on her belly along her secret cave inside the earth to spring forth and fly again tomorrow, I am grateful for the trapper's good wolf pelts and his steel knife with its flint to spark a furtive fire among these skinny trees, while I wait for Karen's raven to take me to where her killers lie. The night wind blows away another bit of my strength, and I huddle in my lupine skins before the tiny flame. Unlike the Comanches, the gusts run away from here to the east after forcing the snows to the ground and piling the delicate flakes into drifts. As the dark darkens, I await the dawn, and the raven and the day's trek that will draw away more of my strength. But not all of it, I tell myself. I will keep my vow, I tell myself, as my shoulders shiver and my trembling fingertips trace the runes of the pendant. Seven minutes to go. Last chance to get all these great rewards. Do I have time for one more? Probably not with 6 minutes. I think I'd better stop there. All right. These are only samples of some of the great stories that are in this book. You haven't even heard from half of them. They're amazing, I think. And I hope that I gave you a sense of the different styles, and the different voices that are being used to write the stories. The broad span of humanity that is being covered, and there are non-human characters as well. There's people from all over the United States. We have quite a lot of Canadian writers, most of whom are new Canadians, actually, so that's kind of cool, right? Ricardo is from Mexico. Joachim is from the Netherlands. Right? It's, it's quite the list of people. All right, coming up as to what to expect in the next little while. There will be an interview with Diana Paxson that will be happening on Kickstarter Live, and then we will premiere it on the YouTube channel. I'll keep announcing things that are coming up on the Kickstarter page, both for our backers and for people who may be happening along and, wondering how we're doing and what's going on. So I'm going to be, I'm not just going to disappear. There will be updates on my Facebook page as well. Every Friday from now until release, I will be posting a book trailer, a new book trailer. There are short little trailers, each featuring 2 or 3 stories from the anthology that I will be posting Friday mornings right up till, I think, even including the day of release. So keep that in mind. Now, here is the Amazon link for the pre-order. Right? If you are not interested in having your name mentioned in the credits, and if you just want the ebook, you can get it right now for a special pre-order price for another 10 days. And then it goes up to full price in March. Full price will be $7.99 US. It's a big book. It's 150,000 words. I think it's well worth the price. 3 minutes to go. All right, so I should also post that pre-order link to the YouTube. If the thing ever fires up, this is a really slow little computer, so. But I can't do it at the same time, or it causes, I can't have the watch window and the broadcast window open at the same time on the other computer. It's just too much. So, well, why don't we go with this? All right. Aha, finally. Okay. In the meantime, I think I'll take this last opportunity to refresh my backer page and personally thank all the backers. All right. Wow. I've run out of space on that page. All right, so that is the pre-order link there. I'm putting in the... There we go. I'm putting in the YouTube chat. Check that out. All right, and 2 minutes to go. Last chance, guys. In the meantime, thank you to Alexander Gutineau, the Creative Fund, Spencer Estabrooks, Zach Chapman, Rob Easton, MacGyver, James Lucas, Andrew Barton, William DeGeest, Stephanie Barr, J.I. Rogers, an anonymous donor, Debbie Johnston Holberton, Jeff Habiger, Alan and Jeremy versus Science Fiction, Hillary Anderson, just a sec here, scrolling, another anonymous donor, S.A. Gibson, Ryan Lester, Evan Miller, Leslie Ann Rogers, another anonymous donor, Jesse Matanak, Christine Thompson, Barbara Johnson, Susan Mitchell, Kat Nesheen, another anonymous donor, Paul Gray, another anonymous donor, Stephen Hunt, Divine Walters, David Perlmutter, Stephanie McNamara, Jennifer Bidlingmeyer Osterman, Tasha Turner, Emma Strigel, Sloan Young, Bert Canatar, Jordan Andrade, Michael Mock, Jen QKW. Special shout out to Jen if you're watching this. As I recall, the last time you did not fill out your backer survey, and I need you to do that if I'm going to send you anything in the mail. Okay. 15 seconds, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're done. All right, I'm going to refresh this page one last time, and I'm going to continue where I left off in thanking our backers. Yay! All right, continuing where I was. Thank you to Igor Winlinsky, Nicholas Watkins, Rhiannon, Aaron Turco, Steve Johnson, Jonathan Slomy, Todd Zurcher, David Chamberlain, Christina Gregory, Brianna Healy, Dwayne Warnecki, Jordan Montagano, Olivia Montoya, Chris, Swordfire, Michael Durr, Stephanie McNamara. Again? Cool. Am I going back? Yes. I'm going back just a second here. Hold on, it's in the wrong page. All right, sorry, where was I? Right. Gregory, Dwayne Warnecki, Jordan Montagano, Olivia Montoya, Chris, Swordfire, and Michael Durr. Thank you all so much. Our grand total is $2,200. I'm a little emotional, sorry. $2,296. 153% funded with 58 backers. I'm so honored and pleased. I know you're going to love it. And thank you so much for your support. I'll keep you updated over the next couple of weeks. Keep watching this channel, wherever it is that you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or my Facebook page or Kickstarter. and I will keep you posted as to what's going on from time to time. In the meantime, look for it everywhere the books are sold, hopefully March 15th. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all again. Thank you to all those who shared the Kickstarter, as well as all those who supported it financially. Sharing it was just as helpful, because even if you couldn't afford to support it, the support encourages others to support it, and the word gets out, and then people know about our anthology, and they'll buy it. They'll buy it because they're going to love it, because it's going to be great. Okay. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.